This is episode 10 with John Vasquez. Welcome to the Reignite Podcast. My name is Todd Judkins, a former naval officer and corporate consultant turned life coach, and each week we'll bring you an inspirational person or message to help you discover how to reignite your life, get back in the game, and thrive in everything you do. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's light the fuse and reignite. In today's podcast, John Vasquez shares his inspirational journey of going from a clean-cut kid to a full-blown addict and the battle to regain what he had lost. John will share with us the steps he took to regain his life, family, and self-worth. This is a story that is often hidden from the outside world. John knows what it feels like to be in a hopeless circumstance and how to reignite your life even at the most desperate times. John has recently captured his story in his newly released book, Roids to Riches, The Fall and Rise of a Spiritual Man, and is now available on Amazon. This is a truly inspirational story, so let's get started. Hello, Reignite Nation. We are here today with John Vasquez, and he is going to share with us what I consider one of the most inspirational stories that I have ever listened to. John is the author of the book, Roids to Riches, The Fall and Rise of a Spiritual Man, and he's going to share with us his life, how he started from a clean-cut kid, fell into addiction, and came back strong. John, how are you?
Doing good. How are you? Thank you.
I am doing well. Let's just get right to it. The setup is just amazing, and just start at the beginning because, Reignite Nation, this is, like I said, one of the most inspirational stories that I've ever listened to. So I'm just going to let John take it over. I can do no justice to this, John.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, I'll just go right into the story. It started when I was a young little boy. I was a chubby kid. I was picked on as a little kid. And there was a moment that happened when I was a young boy. I was on a baseball team and I was working to play sports. And my dad really wanted me to, I think in my mind, he really wanted a good athlete for a son. And I just was not a good athlete. I played Pop Warner football. I never played. I never started. And it started to eat at me as a kid. And so I remember I joined this baseball team. I'll take my hand at baseball. And so I went and joined baseball and same thing. I was striking out all the time, dropping the ball. And the kids that I considered the cool kids were on the team and they gave me a nickname. And I'll never forget it. And so I was so excited that the kids gave me a nickname, the cool kids. Finally, somebody, I was fitting in, and every time I'd strike out, they would call my nickname. And the nickname was Gordo. And I had no idea what the name meant, but I was excited to have a nickname from the cool kids. And so as a couple days went by, my father came to a practice and I was all excited. And he said, "What did they just call you?" I said, "That's my nickname, Dad. I'm super excited. Like, I got a nickname from the cool kids." And he goes, "You know what that means, right?" And I said, "No, I don't know what that means." He said, "It means fat boy." It was the first time in my life I'd ever experienced rejection as a 7-year-old boy. And there was something that shifted in me in that moment, mentally, like literally mentally shifted in me to prove to the world that I was somebody. And so things just started to transition with, not starting in football, not being good at sports. When that happened to me, it's just something weird shifted in me. And I knew as a 7-year-old little boy that I needed to prove to the world who I was. So I was always trying to use my personality to fit in. And I did pretty well fitting in. But then I went in ninth grade, and I'll never forget it. So I went into ninth grade and we had to join a elective class and I got weight training. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. I'm going to be in there with all these buff kids. And I was super nervous and I got under the bench and I remember reaching up and grabbing the bar and the cold steel. I can remember it like it was today. I grabbed the cold steel and I lifted it off and I went down. I remember, boom, I did one rep. And for once in my life, I was in control. It was interesting. I was like, wow, this is something that I'm completely in control of. It doesn't matter if I drop the bar, I drop it on myself. And I absolutely, from that moment on, I remember I went into the locker room, I felt my chest, I felt the blood. I was like, oh my God, I was in control of that. It's not a team sport. I'm an individual. And this right here can get me attention. So I immediately went and picked up I remember it was Flex magazine. Flex Wheeler was on the front of it. Ironically, I remember back in the 90s, he's such a beautiful physique. And I was just obsessed with it. So I'd read these bodybuilding. As other kids are reading comics, I'm reading bodybuilding magazines. And I kept training and my physique just didn't seem to change like those guys. It just didn't. It was weird. There's a genetic part to it as well. And I'm working out and my mom would drop me off early in the morning, even at high school, the gym opened early. So this transitioned into my military years. And when I ended up in California, I ended up at a bodybuilding gym. Things really started to transition for me. So I started hanging out with these bodybuilders. I noticed that they were different. There was something different about them. I was taking the protein, I was taking the creatine, I was doing all the things they were telling me to do in the magazines, the workouts, the squats, the bench press, but my physique just wasn't changing. I still had that heavy type physique. I still was chubby, but I was just a bigger guy now. And so I started to hear about this thing called the juice. And I just really didn't understand it. I was afraid to ask too. I mean, these guys were massive. And I'm like, gosh, what's the juice? And I kept hearing it over and over again. So I competed in my first bodybuilding show. I ended up losing like 65 pounds. I was so excited. I had abs for the first time in my life. It was the most exciting thing I've ever experienced in my life. Well, the cool thing is here I am now on stage and I'm in front of 200 people. And for once in my life, I felt that feeling of like a star quarterback or like somebody who hit the home run. When I used to watch those kids, I'm like, man, I wonder what that feels like to score a touchdown. You know, everybody's cheering for you. I'm on stage and I'm like, all these people are looking at me because of my physique. I didn't look that great. I probably shouldn't have been on stage, but I still had 200 people looking at me. And I was like, wow, that's what this feels like. So the addiction really started there. And then it was interesting. We're told to go talk to the judges after a bodybuilding show. So I went to talk to the judges to get feedback. The judge says to me, he says, I don't know if this is a sport for you, son. You don't have the genetics. And right away, rejection again. I'm like, I'm being rejected here at 20 years old. I'm like, this is crazy. So I went and asked somebody what the juice was. So I was like, what is this juice stuff everybody's talking about? I said, steroids. It's steroids. You know, you need to get on steroids if you want to be a competitive bodybuilder, if you want to be competitive. And I thought about it. And, you know, let me back up just a little bit. Now I'm in the military. I'm a drug interdiction officer, stopping drugs coming across the Mexican border, Operation Border Shield. My father is an undercover gangs and narcotics officer. My brother is in the U.S. Coast Guard as well. He's a narcotics officer. So our whole family completely against drugs, cops, firefighters. My dad was an undercover police officer, stopping drug dealers. And so it just didn't even dawn on me that steroids were a drug. I just thought it was a performance enhancing thing. So I remember sitting on the edge of the tub and I was loading up this syringe of 3 cc's of syringe. It's going to get pretty graphic here, but loaded up a 3 cc's syringe. And I went and sat on the edge of the bed and slowly pushed this needle into my leg. And as it went into my leg, I started thinking, gosh, you know, this isn't too bad. It's not too bad. You know, it's a performance, and I justified it. It's a performance enhancing drug. It's going to give me the attention that I want. It's going to show all those people who I am. And the interesting thing is nothing happened. I think I expected all of a sudden me to like gain muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger. A couple weeks went by, 3 weeks go by, and then the 4th week, magic started to happen. All of a sudden, I literally felt like I gained 10 pounds. And people started to notice me in the gym. They're like, wow, you're getting bigger, man. Awesome. And this deep-rooted obsession with getting bigger and leaner and just stronger and winning shows just got inside of me.
It seems like there's a pattern here of self-reinforcing and justification that you might see from a lot of people that kind of start down that road, even though you had all the motivation and background to say no to this. That drive was just so intense.
Yeah. And it started, what it is I call it the story that you tell yourself, right? It's a story that you're repeating over and over in your head. And it's a voice that was telling me that justifying everything that I was doing, because this is the outcome, right? You're going to prove to these high school kids who you are, right? You're going to show up to the class reunion. I mean, these are the things that I absolutely would think about. I would think about the class reunion, you know, in 10 years from now and how I'm going to show up there. And I would daydream about it. Like I'm going to show up and they're going to see me and they're going to be worried that they made fun of me and things like that. And that it was this justification that kept going on in my head. And it was a story that I was telling myself. And that story manifested and became my truth. So I continued on. So I did my first cycle of steroids, did the next bodybuilding show, did phenomenal. I did really, really well. And then I ended up leaving the military. I called my father, said, hey, I'm leaving the military. I'm going to be an actor and a professional bodybuilder. You can imagine my dad's response. Hung up the phone, didn't talk to me for quite a while. So I moved back to Arizona. And I just dove into bodybuilding. I was dead set that I was going to be the next Sylvester Stallone and working out, and that's going to be my life. And I was living the bodybuilding dream. I was bodybuilding. I was doing the personal training thing, you know, doing some odd jobs here and there, working at clubs like typical bodybuilders. And I just dove into bodybuilding. Now, it was, I guess, healthy to an extent. I'd never taken another recreational drug in my life. I'd never done marijuana, cocaine, none of that stuff. I was just taking steroids, just performance-enhancing drugs. You know, I got my health checked. Health was doing okay. And as I transitioned, my environment started to hang out with more intense bodybuilders in a different environment. So you are truly a product of your environment. Mm-hmm. There was different things that these guys were using. They were partying recreationally, you know, doing different things. And so I never thought that I would take any drug other than steroids. So I started to hang out with a different group of people and I got introduced to painkillers. It was really interesting. So I was training I wanted to be the best. So I hired one of the best bodybuilders I could find. And he asked me, I had a small little injury, and he said, have you ever trained on painkillers? I said, why would I take painkillers? I didn't get it. I just didn't understand. So, well, number one, you're going to push harder. And let me back up just a moment. Now, even though my physique is improving, even though I look way better, I'm still the scared little boy. I'm still depressed. I'm still sad. I'm still lonely. And it seemed as I grew and got a better physique, the loneliness got deeper. It was almost like as I looked better, the ego got bigger and the sadness it was interesting. Like when hand in hand, as my physique looked better, my ego got bigger, the insecurity got larger. I guess that's what you would say. And so I was very sad. I was very lonely. And at this point, I'm now married and we were newlyweds. I got introduced to the painkiller. So I took it before a leg workout and I'll never forget it. I took the painkiller and at halfway through the workout, I started to feel this euphoric feeling. I was like, wow, oh my gosh, that feels good. And so I'm doing this set and I literally did a 100-rep set with leg press. I'd never done anything like that. I just kept going and going and going and going. Now my legs were my worst body part. And the next day it felt like my legs grew. So two things had happened. Number one, I had this amazing euphoric feeling. The sadness went away for about 3 hours. And I noticed that. Number two, my legs seemed like they grew the next day, which is probably impossible, but they were so swollen from the workout. I'm like, okay, so if I do this for my legs and I want to be a pro bodybuilder, what if I do it for my arms? What if I do it for my back? So I decided that I'll just take one every time I train. So he gave me a bottle of them. And now here I am. Let's back up again. 2001, never taken a drug in my life, drug and addiction officer. Now I'm taking steroids. Now I'm taking painkillers, right? So you can see the path here of how when you change your environment, how things can drastically change. Going from being a clean-cut kid, father being a police officer.
Yeah, I was going to say, what did you use when you started taking painkillers to justify that event or that escalation on your path to addiction?
I think at that point, I don't even know if justification was there anymore. I think it was obsession. It was absolutely obsession. I don't think there was even justification. It was just a massive obsession with proving to the world who I was. And at that point, I was willing to do whatever it took. I was willing to do whatever it took to be the best, to get the attention. And I was addicted to the attention because now I'm getting attention. Now I'm starting to build this bodybuilding company. I have websites were coming out and websites were becoming popular. I started a bodybuilding company called Team Vasquez, and I was featuring other bodybuilders. We were starting to hit all the United States. We were training people in other states. We were starting to do the online training thing. And so I was experiencing a little bit of fame in the bodybuilding world. And my gosh, from going from being picked on as a little kid to having a little bit of fame in your own little world, I guess, in your own little mind, is very addicting. It's extremely addicting. And, now I can see why some of these actors, end up where they're at because they get a taste of it and it's insatiable. You just want more and more. And so with that came, these are things that I didn't have time to talk about where I met you and where I spoke is, with that, I went from driving a Ultima to a H2 Hummer. I mean, big changes in my life, like very humble guy driving an Ultima. I was always about saving money and buying a economical car. Now here I am driving an H2 Hummer. I mean, just my whole mindset changed, my whole environment changed. And one thing that I realized is that my thoughts were truly becoming things. Like everything that I wanted in my heart was what I was thinking in my mind, and it became my words, and I manifested all of it. So, which I'll talk about after the fall, because it's how I reverse engineered everything. But I realized that everything I wanted in my heart and everything I thought about was manifesting. I was thinking, I'm going to prove to people that I'm somebody. And guess what? I was proving to whoever that somebody was in my mind. And so, mind you, I started taking those painkillers. The interesting thing was the euphoric feeling. That's what got me. Things had gone for about a year and I'm taking them pretty casually. And now I'm getting separated from my wife. So you can see how my attitude's changing. I was very positive. I was like who I was. Now I was changing into a different person. Like I just thought I was somebody. I don't know how to explain it, but I thought I was bigger than the world. And so my relationship started to suffer. Now we have we have a little girl coming on board, our beautiful daughter. And as that transitioned, we end up getting separated. I'm living in an apartment. Now the stress levels are through the roof. The business is taking off. I'm now in the process of probably getting divorced. I'm not being the best father, just being honest with you. I was not being the best father. I was more focused on, I started a club promotion company. I had all these things going on. And I remember sitting at my desk. This was a critical moment in the whole fall of myself. I remember sitting at my desk. I was super stressed out, had tons of emails coming in. I had all these clients and the bottle was sitting there. And I'm like, that euphoric feeling, let me just try one. So I took one outside of training and all of a sudden this euphoric feeling hit me. I was like, whoa, that felt good. And I remember working till like midnight. I'm like, I was just on a roll. I was in that flow state. I'm like, wow, that felt really good. Well, it wore off and I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and had a massive headache. I'm like, I'll just take another one. And you can see how people get quickly addicted to opiates. So I took another one and I took it to train. So it went from 2 pills a day to 3 pills a day to 4 pills a day to 5 pills a day to at the point where I was taking close to 20 pills a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the opioid epidemic that's going on right now is something that you see how it can spread and how rapidly it's spreading. So, because you've experienced it.
And it's interesting too. I just left corporate America, but people think drug addiction. They think, you think drug addict, right? You think crack house, you think something like that, but it is an epidemic. It's unbelievable. I mean, nobody knew I had addiction. Nobody knew. I had hid the whole thing completely. And what happened is there was another transition that happened. So now I'm taking 20 pills a day. Now I'm just taking the pills to feel normal, just to feel normal, just to feel like a normal human being. And so I had to transition. I was like, I either need to try to come off of these things, but the reason I didn't come off of it is because of the ego. My ego didn't want to tell people that the little insecure boy was here. He's back. I'm going to be a loser again. People are going to make fun of me.
Yeah. So again, it just perpetuates itself and keeps rolling forward. So yeah. So take me to the moment where, eventually you hit rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
This is a roll that you kept going. So what was that moment you said, this is it. This is the bottom. This is changing. What was that moment?
Yeah, I'm going to take you there right now. So that's where the transition happened. So now I'm taking 20 pills a day. My ego won't allow me to get help. It just won't allow me to get help because the ego is telling me that if you tell people, you're going to be made fun of again. You're just going to go right back to that rejected kid. People are going to make fun of you. They're going to say, I told you so. Because people are telling me I couldn't build this business. I built a great business. And so I needed something different. I wasn't getting high off of it anymore. I didn't feel good anymore. I was sick all the time. And then I got introduced by the same bodybuilder. He introduced me to a drug called Nubane, which is they say it's the second most addictive to heroin. It's an injectable painkiller. Completely transformed my life, not in a positive way, right? So it's an injectable painkiller. You actually inject it. And again, here we go. I inject the painkiller and the euphoric feeling's back. So now I've transitioned to a different type of opioid. And now the feeling is back. And I'm like, yes, I got it. That feeling is back. It's euphoric. I'm running my business. I'm fine. It quickly transitioned from beginning of 2006 to July 2006, having a good amount of money in my account. From July 2006 to December 18th, which I'm going to tell you guys, try not to get emotional, but December 18th, 2006 is when the tragedy happened. So mind you, there was a lot of signs. People were telling me stuff. I remember sitting with my accountant about 6 months before December 18th, and he was like, I remember him saying, you're going broke. Because all I could think about was the drug. That's literally all I could think about. I spent my whole existence seeking the drug. And unbeknownst to me, like a lot of people on opiates, you don't know your life's falling apart. You literally don't notice that your whole life is falling apart. I didn't realize that I was losing clients left and right. I didn't even care that I was losing clients left and right. I was hardly even seeing my daughter. I was sick all the time. And we were starting to film this. They were filming a pilot for a reality show. So that was even worse. There's more pressure there. And mind you, so I'll fast forward. So here we are, December 18th, 2006. And I'm like, I got to go Christmas shopping. Christmas is coming up. I got to go Christmas shopping. So I go to Walmart. I pack up I'm just throwing stuff in the cart. I just want to buy some stuff for my daughter. And I'm excited about it too, because it's giving me joy because I'm doing something for my daughter. I loved her to death. I still love her to death. But I bring the card up to the cashier and I swipe my debit card and it declines. And my debit card never declined before. I never overdrafted my account, anything like that. Swipe it again. Lady's like, hey, your card's declining. I'm like, it's impossible. So I pull out a credit card. I swipe the credit card. Declines. So I pull out my business debit card, declines. I pull out the business credit card, declines. And the people are getting frustrated with me in the line and I'm starting to get really kind of aggressive. And I'm like, swipe my debit card, swipe. She's like, sir, I'll hold your card, but there's something wrong with your bank account. And so I go to the side, I call the bank and they say, you might want to come into the bank. And so I go into the bank and the interesting thing was the kid sitting across from me, look, I ended up in banking, which is so interesting, but the young man sitting across from me was this young banker. And as I became a banker, I have a picture. It almost looked exactly like me, which is so weird. I remember sitting across from this kid and all I could think about sitting there was like, I need to hurry up because I need to get high again. I need to go in the bathroom and take a shot. I literally was taking the drug every 20 minutes. That's how addicted I was. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, come on, hurry. Let's show me what's going on. And I remember he turned the screen towards me and I'd never seen an overdrafted account before. That was mine. And it was red. It was just negative red, negative red, negative red. And he said, sir, you don't have any money. And I was like, that's impossible. That's impossible. We've always had money. Like we have tons of money coming in. We have EFTs coming to people's accounts. And he said, no, sir. And I kept arguing with him over and over again. And this manager comes over and I remember he puts his hand on his shoulder and all of a sudden it just hit me. It like literally hit me. I'm like, I'm broke. I'm broke. All of a sudden, everything goes numb. My ears start ringing, and the manager is trying to say something to me. And he's saying to me, he said, I could see him saying, he's like, you're broke. Like, there's no money. And all of a sudden, I just start sweating. I can't hear anything. Everything's going blurry. And all of a sudden, this voice kicks in my head, which I know I believe in God. The devil speaking to me saying, it's over, John. It's over. You're back. You're back to the little boy. Nobody cares about you. You're a loser. And it just started perpetuating in my head. And I was telling this story over and over again. I got in my big H2 Hummer. And I remember I was just driving in this zone and it kept saying, it's over. It's over. It's over. And over again. I'm like, oh my God, stop. It's like, it's done. You're broke. You've lost all your clients. You're losing your bodybuilding shows now. Nobody cares about you, which was a lie. Nobody cares about you. You can't even take care of your daughter. You can't even put food on the table. You're about to get evicted from your apartment. To me, it literally was over. And it's so interesting. I didn't grow up, I mean, my parents believe in God, but I didn't grow up in the church. And it's interesting when people will seek God. I'd never prayed. I'd never sat down on my knees and prayed. And I remember driving to my office and I was like, start praying to God. I'm like, God, like, if you're real, like, come to me right now, like, talk to me. And silence. It was just this voice that kept coming and just saying, it's over, John. It's over. You're a loser. So I went into my office on December 18, 2006. I went in there and we had this mattress thing for something. I blew it up and I laid it down. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want my parents to find me laying on the ground. And so I loaded up what I thought would be a lethal amount of Nubane. And I put one needle in my arm, loaded up, did it, got the third one. And I remember consciously grabbing the needles and pulling out of my arm so that they wouldn't find me with needles in my arm. And I threw the needle and that was it. And so I ended my life on December 18, 2006. Obviously, I failed again. I'm here. So good thing I was a loser in that one. So,
and thank you, Lord, for you being a loser in that one, because you're definitely a cherish to us here. So, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I know how hard that is to, kind of discuss the moments when you hit rock bottom, but you are here and you're thriving now. Tell us on how you changed, how you got back on the road to being healthy, to now where you are, being able to share your story and being able to make a positive impact on the world, because it is truly positive.
Thank you. Thank you. So sorry, I was struggling to get through that end part, but so let me share with you how I knew I wasn't dead. 48 hours later, I didn't know it was 48 hours later, but a phone rang. And so I started hearing this ringing. I sat up and I was in this complete fog and I just heard this ringing sound. Remember the old razor flip phones? And I just, that distinctive ring, and it kept ringing and then it would vibrate. Now my phone would ring and vibrate and it was vibrating on the glass. And actually the desk I have right behind me here is actually the same desk that was in my office, it's kind of nostalgic. And so I went over there and I sat down, and on the razor phone, they had a little screen there and it said mom across the front. And I popped it open and all I remember hearing was my mom saying, Joey. My mom never calls me Joey. That was my name when I was a little boy. She said, Joey, I don't know what's going on with you, but I need you to read a book. And I wanted to tell her in that moment, I wanted to say, Mom, I'm an addict. Like, I need help. But it hit me. I'm like, I'm not dead. Oh my God, I didn't die, but I was so high from all the drugs in my system. I didn't know if it was death. I didn't know if this was hell. I didn't know where the heck I was. But I remember my mom saying, you have to read this book. And I said, Mom, what book is it? And she said, The Secret. Your grandma read the book and she loved the book and she wanted to share it with you. And all I can remember is The Secret. So in this daze, I get in my car and I go to Barnes and Nobles and I get the book called The Secret. And I had no idea what I was getting. And the lady fumbled with me and I must have been completely out of sorts, because the lady's like looking at me and I'm like, just give me this book. Like, I need this book. And so she got me the DVDs and I went back to my office and I'm sitting in my office. So I popped the DVD in my computer. I start to read the book. Then I just watch the DVD and I'm like, oh my gosh. And mind you, as I'm sitting in my office, imagine this. My walls are gray in my office. There's pictures of bodybuilders all over my office that I've helped, many that I put on steroids, all over my office that we've all followed this same path. Not all of them are as where I'm at. A lot of them live healthy lives and things like that. That's a path that I chose. But I'm like, I get it. Everything I asked for, I manifested. It just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, everything I asked for, I manifested. I wanted to be famous in bodybuilding. I somewhat got there in my own little mind, right? I wanted the girls. I got the girls. I wanted the cars. I got the cars. I wanted the money. I got the money. Everything I asked for, I got. So in that moment, I said, I can reverse engineer this. If I got it that way, I can do it the good way. I can completely So now here I am. I'm sitting there 48 hours later. I realize my business is gone. I'm broke. I'm being evicted from my apartment in 2 days. I have no money. I have negative $370 in my account. I can barely take care of my daughter. So I just humbled myself. My amazing parents, they took me in at 31 years old. I just started to train myself from the inside out. And so I focused on 4 principles. So I'll go through those 4 principles, if you don't mind.
No, please.
Yeah. So the four principles, for the number one principle that I had to develop and something that I'm continuing to work on as I grow my relationships and everything, number one thing I had to do was forgiveness. I literally had to forgive myself for letting investors down, forgive myself for needing to shut the business down, forgive myself for letting clients down and losing clients' money, forgiving myself for being a horrible father, not even taking care of my daughter, forgiving myself for not being able to put a roof over my daughter's head, forgiving myself for not being able to feed her, forgiving the people that picked on me, forgiving the things that happened to me as a child that caused a lot of this stuff that I won't go into. I literally did this cleansing process where I forgave everybody. And I realized what it did was is it planted me right in the present moment. It almost like erased, it didn't erase the past, but it felt like it did. It like erased it. And I all of a sudden was in this present moment. And I realized that all that mattered was that present. I had this weird realization that all that matters is this present moment. And I'm like, okay, so now from this point on, what do I do? Like, where do I go now? I've forgiven everybody. I really can't worry about what people think about me. I have to move on. The next step was a second principle, is my why. And that's what really helped me get through this is, I came up with a saying that says, if your why doesn't make you cry, get a different why. So what I decided in that moment, and it was through my emotion, is that I will never, ever, ever put my child or children now to this day in that situation ever again. And so what happened is it created this deep emotional why in me to move me forward to take action. So first I forgave everything. I let go of the past. Now I'm in the present moment. And every day I woke up, I would look at the picture of my daughter and I say, I will never, ever put you in that situation again. And it makes me emotional today to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so it started to drive me. It started to drive my actions. It started to drive my behaviors. The weirdest thing started happening. By releasing everything into the past, I was in the present moment. I started having these great conversations with people. All of a sudden, these amazing people started coming into my life. I'm doing positive affirmations. And all of a sudden, I meet this mentor, this guy, Joe. I want to give him credit, Joe Italic. This guy comes into my life out of the blue. Literally the blue. He's like, I want you to train me. And I'm like, I don't even know if I'm even qualified to be a trainer anymore. And he became my client. And I know it was God. This guy comes on board. And he taught me with the fourth principle that I'll go into in just a moment. But I'm like, I started to connect the dots. Because I release the past, I'm living in the present moment, and I have a strong why, that things are starting to manifest for me again. And so I didn't question it, and I just started diving in. So the next principle that I focus on, and I use these four principles every single day, up in 11 years later. Number 3 is comfort zone. Every single day. And I can write down the things that I do do something to make myself uncomfortable, whether it's having a difficult conversation, whether it's calling somebody that makes me uncomfortable, whether it's looking someone up on the white pages that's like way above my level, and I'll just call them. Like I do weird stuff like that every single day. Now, everything was outside my comfort zone after that happened, right? I was engrossed in this bodybuilding world. Now I'm leaving. I'm going into the corporate world. So that was completely outside my comfort zone. But I kept doing that. Every day I'd go outside my comfort zone. So I started waking up earlier. I started these patterns that I'd follow. So I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and I started doing these workouts, and I started doing all this stuff for my mind training. The fourth principle is what Joe Italic taught me. I want to give him credit where credit's due, is giving back. It was the most interesting thing that when I started to do this, not to receive, but when I started to do this is when my life really, really changed. So we had forgiveness, a strong why every single day I wake up, getting outside your comfort zone. And Joe was on the treadmill. I remember the incline it was on and everything. And I was, as a trainer, I'm kind of hanging off the side of it. And I said, he's like, you want to tell me what's going on? And I shared with him. He's the first person I told really what was going on. And I don't know why I felt apt to tell this guy. He was heaven sent. I know him to this day. He's an amazing human being. And he said, when you have nothing, you give something. And I was like, that makes no sense. I was like, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I always thought monetary. I thought give money, right? He said, when you have nothing, give something. He goes, if you want something, give it. And he goes, let me explain it. Because if you want love, give love. And I said, okay. And he said, if you want money, you give money. He goes, if you want service, you give service. And I'm like, okay. So I just thought it was monetary, right? And so I was struggling with this. And there was another thing that Joe told me as well. And I said, well, Joe, I'm lost, man. I just don't know who I am. I'm forgiving now. I forgave everybody. I have a strong why. I'm ready to move forward. I'm outside my comfort zone. But how do I literally find myself again? How do I find who I am? And he told me this interesting thing. He said, call your mother. He said, you say you're close with your mom. I said, yeah, we're back. We have a great relationship again. He said, call your mom and ask her who you were before you went into junior high. Okay. So he says, just try it. Just do it. And so I called her and I'm like, this is a funny response my mom had. I called her up and I said, Mom, who was I before I went into junior high? She said, are you on drugs again? Funny response. I said, no, Mom, I'm clean. I need to know. And she said, well, you were funny. You were kind. you were caring, and you really loved people. And I was like, okay, thanks. And I hung up. So I brought it back to him. He goes, go back to that person, start giving, and you're going to be just fine. And it just resonated with me for some reason. It just read it. So I was like, I had nothing. I had negative money in my account. Now I'm living with my parents at 31 years old. My daughter's staying there with us as well. And I start giving back. I start volunteering. So when I needed food, I'm passing out food at a food shelter. And the craziest thing happened when I was at that food shelter. I'm like passing out food, and no drug ever gave me that type of high. It was weird. No, I had never experienced that type of endorphin rush. So I'm sitting there passing out food to other human beings when I need it myself. And I'm sitting there going, I'd like to eat some of this food. And, I was passing it out to them. And it was almost like that high was back. I'm like, oh, wow. This is what they're talking about. Like, and I got addicted to giving. I got addicted to it like it's drugs. Problem is, it's an addiction, but
yeah, I always say that, the human body is the best, drug dealer, because it's giving you everything that's good, right? And you tap into your inner self through mindset. I meditate, and sleep is a big part of my practice. We have so much in common, John. We can go forever on that it just, your body takes care of itself. It knows who you are, and it wants to take care of you. You just have to allow it.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing you hit on is great because, that's where my deep-rooted obsession, I have obviously an obsessive compulsive personality, but the good thing is now it's with good stuff, so I recognize that about myself. And so I'm like you, I'm addicted to meditation, prayer. I do meditation before sleep to go into deeper sleep, and I do all kinds of stuff like that. The interesting thing was, and I want to bring this to people, and, I know people are struggling with different things out there, right? Is that, when I go to the doctors, and I'm not saying anything against doctors, but when I go to the doctors, they kept giving me more medication to get myself right. And I'm like, I finally one day had this epiphany. So they're putting me on depression medication because I'm sad. I'm like, I'm sad because I got my butt kicked. I'm on my back, and I just don't feel like a man. Like, I just need, what I realized at one point, I was like, I'm coming off all this, like, because now it's being justified because it's being given to me by a doctor, Zoloft, depression medication. I went to the doctor one day. I said, take me off everything. Like, I'm not depressed. It's a choice. And mind you, there is medically things like that. But for me personally, it was a choice to be depressed. I know there's people out there that have medical things, but for me personally, it was a choice to be depressed. And I just said, I'm like, I'm not going to be depressed anymore. And there was a moment that I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, and this was about a year later. So the recovery took a while. And it was a year later, and I always had to be around people before. And I remember sitting on my book, and I was reading, it was the Tao. And I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and I was reading a book, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually comfortable sitting here by myself, and I'm enjoying myself. And I walked outside, and this is in my book, and I talk about this, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember walked outside, at this point I have an apartment again, and I'm back, kind of getting back on my feet. I'm at corporate America. And I started walking around, and I noticed the flowers. I'd never noticed the flowers before. And then I noticed the air like touching my face. I was like, I can feel the wind hitting my face. And then I felt the sun, and I'm like, this is pretty cool, man. And then I started to like get addicted to that. I'm like, okay, am I becoming one with the universe? Like, what is happening here? Because I'm reading, and I'm like, maybe it's because I'm reading the Tao, and I'm, maybe it's because what you think about comes about. But then I started to really recognize that. And from that moment on, I came off of everything, whether it was given by a doctor, not just completely off of everything. And I started to recognize all the blessings. So I'd wake up in the morning. I do the same routine every single morning. I pray to God. And I always say, I'm happy and grateful for the money that comes to me in increasing quantities, just from multiple sources. And I do all these weird things. And then when I go outside, I thank the sun for being there. It's interesting, but that's something it's important for people to understand too, that it takes a while. It takes a while, but you just have to keep stepping in faith. You have to stay focused. But you said something that really resonated with me, is that I teach people is that everything you need is inside of you. Mm-hmm. Everything. I was damaged. I mean, I was broken inside. I mean, my body was like, my doctor said, you're like a dying 80-year-old man. I have the health of a 25-year-old now, like, healthy, and mind you, I put a lot of work into it, internal health and things like that. But your body is an amazing, amazing machine that can repair itself. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And this has just been an awesome, inspiring story. And like I said, John, I've talked before, and you've shared your story with me before, and this was just as good, just as emotional on my side. So I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing that. And I know a lot of people out in Reignite Nation are going to really appreciate that, knowing that, hey, when you're down, there is a way back, right? And you're living proof of it. And I'm so glad you're here. So I know a lot of people are going to want to get a hold of you. And you actually have a new program that you're going to be launching early next year. Why don't you tell us just really quickly, give us a tease about that? Because the reason why, everybody, that I want John to give us a tease, because I've actually wanted to get him back on the show to have a deeper discussion about this new program, which sounds exciting. So why don't you tell us just a quick tease, And then tell us, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about it. So with all my internal health and working on from this, now I work on everything from the inside out. When I hit 35 years old, I literally stopped. I could not keep off my body fat. I'm like, what is going on? So I went deep into research like I always do. I've developed a program that I'm launching called the 3T method. So it's timing of your foods, targeted macronutrients, and triggered workouts. And it's designed for men over 35 to shred stubborn body fat. And so it teaches men how to not have to live like a bodybuilder and carry 6 meals a day. It just teaches people how to eat in windows to create insulin sensitivity. So your body will use your carbohydrates, and you can eat carbs. That's the exciting thing. I teach men how to allow their body to be insulin sensitive so they can use carbohydrates for fuel, and also how to trigger their workouts so they don't have to spend hours in the gym. And by doing that, in 8 weeks, by beta testing myself over and over again, 8 weeks, I lost 22 pounds and my waist went down to 28 inches. So, wow. But I'm taking a bunch of people through the beta test. But yeah, that's launching, but it's specifically for men over 35. That's my specialty.
Yep. And yeah, like I said, we've invited John back to talk about that. And for those of you who are going to be viewing this on YouTube, you'll see John and you'll know that he's speaking the truth here by the visuals that we see. Awesome. Awesome, John. I want to thank you. But before we go today, I just want to ask one final reignite question. If you can give one piece of advice to someone who is struggling with the addiction, or someone that you know who's struggling with addiction, what advice would that be? That one golden nugget that somebody can take away?
Oh man, that's a great one. So let the ego go and get help. Just let the ego go. The ego's very strong. Just let the ego go. It will be okay. People want to help you. People want to help you. Whether you believe it or not, people are not going to judge you. They're not. And I think that's something. Take me, for example. The ego almost killed me. It literally almost took my life, and it takes someone's life almost every single day with opiates. And it's just, you're not alone. That's one thing I want to say. But just let the ego go, get help. Everybody's going to love on you. I promise you. I promise you.
Awesome. I have no words there. So John, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing and giving your all. This was just an awesome, inspiring episode. And I truly appreciate you for being on the Reignite podcast.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Reignite podcast. If this episode resonated with you in any way, please share it with a friend. One of the greatest experiences human beings is being able to mastermind as a group, where we get together and collectively share and build off of each other's energy. Reigniting is no longer about accepting life as it comes, but designing the life you desire. We are committed to bringing you thought-leading and thought-provoking discussions to inform and motivate you in finding the joy in your journey, no matter what road you choose to take. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Todd Judkins, or send me an email at connect@toddjudkins.com. I'd love to hear about your struggles, your successes, and your thoughts. Thank you for listening, Reignite Nation. And always remember, the joy is not only in the destination, but what life has to offer in the journey. We'll be back with another full episode on Tuesday and with a short Reignite message on Friday just to jumpstart your weekend. Until then, keep that fuse lit and reignite.